looks like he's coming our way. Hopefully we can scare him away.
Well, that was a good morning. Good morning for our friend Cowboy Jeff and his son. And, man, I couldn't sleep last night. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I think it's 1 o'clock now or something. And, but anyways, managed to get them both out fishing. And they limited out. And it was the son's first time being on the ocean fishing. And, obviously, you always hope for the kid, to get the fish, right? Well, he got a few fish. But if he didn't land the biggest of the docks so far this season, got a 30-pounder. It was pretty exciting. And of course, it was a battle from hell. Fish went on a rip. And then, unfortunately, his son had loosened off the drag of my reel, which is a no-no. Completely loosened the whole thing, bird nested, tangled up, which means you can't get the fish any more line. Thank God. It was after about the third long run. We managed to get him in and get him in the net. Whew. That was pretty exciting. Here's a picture for all you anglers out there. But anyways, I'll share with you guys what happened yesterday. I don't normally, I know I go to places where these experiences go down. But I don't have any choice in the matter because I live on this planet too. And I will not be frightened out of enjoying my passions. Best I can anyway, right? I've also shared with you guys the fact that I always say, just leave me alone. I'm not into you guys. Leave me alone. Let me do my thing, right? I say it all the time. I've never left a gift or tried to communicate directly with these beings, ever. Not to date. I think if I do, or if I decide to, or when I decide to go witness it, possibly subject myself to it, it'll be with the few groups who share here continually with them as guides in a way, possibly. And maybe one day I will accompany them and see what is shown to me. But until then, I just like to mind my own business. I share these experiences. I go to where I want to go, but I always state that I want to be left alone. So far, it's worked for the most part pretty decently, right? I mean, you guys have seen things thrown at me. We've heard the odd thing. I've had, what else have we had? We've had a couple of bona fide UFOs get caught in the video behind me. People have pointed out. But anyways, I might as well share what happened yesterday. So on my way out in the logging roads, which is around 2 hours and a bit travel to get out here, I stopped at a lake. It's not really a, I mean, the odd person goes there. It's a tiny little road that goes off the main logging road and drops right down to the lake. It's grown in. It's a large, mature timber around it. Lots of big, mature alders, thick undergrowth, lots of bushy leafed bushes, young alders, I guess. Fir, cedar, hemlock. And I decided I just needed time out, right? Got away from home, got my food, got my stuff, headed out, drove about an hour and a half. And it's not too far away from my First Nations friends from here. Have had numerous encounters. It's also, I was about 1 kilometer away from where I sat on those logs. Remember those logs piled across the old logging road, and I'd sit there? And that one time, I got absolutely freaked out and I couldn't sit there anymore. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I left, remember that spot? I'm 1 kilometer away from there. And this is yesterday. So I backed down, because it's pretty tight down there to turn around. It's growing right in. And I'm backing down, and I glanced out my driver's side window as I was backing down the lake. And I thought I saw a bright light through a hole in the timber to my left, about maybe 15 meters away. One little hole. And I caught it in my eye, but as I was backing down, I lost sight of it again, and I thought, what was that? Well, it's probably just a reflection off a beer bottle or something, or a can or something, right? But then I was thinking about it, and obviously it registered in my mind, and it wouldn't leave my mind, and I dropped the tailgate, got my lunch, got a can of water, And I kept kind of thinking to myself, no, not today. I'm not into this. Was it? That was a weird light. And as I was thinking that, then I went to move the plastic tray my food was in. I grabbed it on the tailgate and I thought I heard a bit of a rumble, some weird rumble. And believe me, once you have had these facts, this reality slapped in your face, I was talking about Jeff with this morning, you can never go in the woods ever again without a part of your subconscious, the part of your brain is always on the alert for relative sounds that accompany these experiences. You can't stop yourself. And then I heard that noise. And then my alert was on from the second I backed down. I just felt more alert than normal. Kept thinking about that light. Was it or wasn't it? Oh, well, we'll see. Just eat your lunch. Mind your own business. And then I heard a rumble. Heard or felt a rumble. I don't know what it was. And then I tried to move the tray on the tailgate. Nope. I didn't make that sound. Now my alert goes up a few more notches. I'm like, that was probably nothing. Whatever. But then, as I'm standing there eating my food, a absolute crack under a lot of pressure. Branch, whatever you want to call it, branch or tree went crack in the thick bushes to my right. But the sounds of it, if I had to guess, about maximum 20 yards away from me, maybe even less. And it was absolutely, by the time I got down the lake on both sides, it's way too thick. And then immediately every hair on I'm getting goosebumps right now. Every hair on my body went on end. I'm like, not today, not into this. And I just abruptly didn't even close my tailgate. I grabbed my food, got in my truck, and drove away. See ya. Thanks for the invite, but no thanks. Maybe if possibly I had at least 50 yards visibility, then maybe, possibly I would have stayed there, but no. If something were to be going down, it was going to go down right in my face. And when you're down a thick road like that, or if you're downhill in the bottom of a gully looking up, you always have that somewhat sense of vulnerability, right? You're very vulnerable. Alone, in a remote place, back down a tight, grown-in road, where if there is anything on either side of you, you are not going to physically see it until it is about an arm's length away. Picking up what I'm putting down. But before that happened too, I was gazing across the lake, and I could have swore I saw something moving just around the corner of the lake. Big branch went up, down, and then up. I just caught it, and I kept on staring at it as I'm eating, thinking, what the hell was that? I kept an eye on it. It did move again. I'm like, whatever. And then it was about 2 more mouthfuls of my lunch, and then that massive crack. It's funny though, when you hear that crack, a lot of us who have been in the woods a long time, we've heard trees falling over from being saturated and rotten or whatever. We've all heard a tree go. Right? There's a slow build up and you can hear the noise. But you do not hear a massive, under high pressure crack. And then it's accompanied by all the hair on your body standing on end. Right? That's the key factor for me, because not much makes the hair on my body stand on end. So there you go. That's what happened yesterday. End. Story about me. Now, let's hear some people's voices. And also, sorry, I was also thinking, maybe later on, once I hook up with these various people who allegedly are in communication with various groups of these beings. And the word in the street is they can communicate over long distance, right? It'll be interesting to see if there is any knowledge of somebody or something maybe possibly trying to introduce themselves to me. Maybe. That would not be interesting, right? If we found that on later on, right? Okay, listen to this. This is titled Holy Shit in BC. Not entirely sure where to begin. My name is Kyle. I honestly just began watching your guide stories, and then I started seeing more and more of your videos and realized this guy's legit, and he knows. I think all of your content is awesome anyway. I know there's a lot of shit to sift through. Myself, have grown up in BC and in the woods from a young age of 4 or 5, now nearly 35. From age 10 to 17, I lived at the remote northern hunting and fishing lodge at the end of Stewart Lake. As a BC man, you may know the area. Anyway, without rambling on too much, I've spent hours upon hours in the wilderness, a lot like yourself. I know my way around and what's out there. My first encounter where I physically put eyes on the beings was 10 years ago, and not in the same place as I grew up, but made me realize all the signs I had missed before I was a young kid. I'd like to tell you the first encounter, and I'm okay with you sharing so you see fit. I stopped talking about it with people unless I know they had an experience or they are very close. So this story is big, so I'll try to get it across in writing the best I can. October 4th, 2010. I picked my close friend up around 4 a.m. We had a bit of a drive to get to the setting I wanted to be at for daybreak. We parked the truck and proceeded on foot. It was still dark. As we approached the clearing, I was hoping to watch as we walked. I had the somethings behind us feelings, but when I'd shine the light back, there would be nothing. When we finally got to the spot I wanted to watch for sunrise, it was drizzling rain. Senses were sharp, and as we sat watching the meadows, we heard simultaneous sounds from behind us, from the rear left and rear right. As we hear the ever so slight footsteps, we turned around and focused our attention in the directions of the sounds. Then a stick breaks on the left side. My friend Lloyd hits the location of sound with a light, and we see an eye at the edge of a tree. Imagine yourself peering around a tree and half of your face still being hidden. Anyway, the only problem there was the height of it on the tree. I whispered to my bro, it's got to be 10 feet high from the bank, and that's not possible. And no sooner was it gone, and the same sounds we heard come in quietly. There's a bunch of punctuation missing, okay, but we'll get it. And no sooner was it gone, and the same sounds we heard come in quietly went back the directions they seemed to come from, one north, one southwest-ish. Not knowing what the F we had just encountered, there we waited for daylight to break, and as it became walkable, without a light, I began walking the way of the southwest sound. My bro stayed at the meadow. I had intended to circle the bottom of it and push into it to possibly push something towards him. But as I approached the lower drainage, I started hearing footsteps. So instead of going left in the drainage, the sound started leading me into this really thick game trail, thick everywhere on the north coast, so hard to see much more than 20 yards sometimes. As I got in, I started to feel very uneasy and spook. I don't spook, but everything in me said, turn the F around. So I did. I had a lever action 30-30 iron sight. I backed out and decided to circle right of the sound. As I did, it brought me into a half-moon meadow, the top tip being the direction of the sound in the thick. So I make my way to the tip of the moon. Now I'm hearing the sound again in the same sort of thick, like it hasn't moved and is still in there. So, back to a small tree, I'll look back towards the way I come into this meadow, and there's a line of spruce about 15 to 20 feet tall, young and bushy. And it's in the meadow, with about a 5-foot gap from the thicket I come out from. As I'm looking, I see a large, dark, grayish figure pass from the thicket to behind the tree. I instantly shoulder my rifle. Nothing walks out. Strange. Is it my bro? I lower my rifle, still nothing has come from behind it, and nothing went back into the thicket. Then all of a sudden, about 70 small chickadees. I call them Sasquatch birds now, I'll get to that later. But no shit, that tree became encased in them little birds. Then flew right at me and over my left side and gone. But I never took my eyes off that tree and never seen a damn thing come out or go back. For something to have been there, and me not to see it, it would have had to stay in direct line with me and the tree until it hit the far tree line. So, it couldn't be a bear, a deer, or a moose or something, right? Yeah, well, there were no definitive tracks of any kind, so I was scratching my head. So I carried back out to the road. I entered the drainage at, and as I did, I hear my friend whistling like crazy. Can't I get out of the wind just in case the wind's licking the mic on this camera? Well, maybe we're all right. You know, the emergency whistle. And it's in a way different area than the area I just had this stuff happen. So that being said, I beelined for him on the road. He had gotten freaked out that something came back when I left. And he went looking for me and dropped down the meadow and around the lake and up to the top of the road across from the lake. Where my truck is parked, whatever I was hearing wasn't him. And whatever he was hearing wasn't me. He was a bit over the day. Okay, he was a bit over the day and wanted to start heading out. I'd refrained from mentioning what had happened to me so far. And as we started heading out, I said, hey, you walk back to that metal, and I'm going to cut the bottom edge. But I think he probably meant meadow. And I'm going to cut the bottom edge here, and I'll meet you where we first heard these sounds in the morning. He reluctantly agrees. As I start going in, I notice fresh tracks, a bull moose that wasn't there earlier. Interesting, so I followed into the thick brush, and soon they become tough to track. And as you know, some places you just don't bother tracking. But there's something in here. Let's see if I can push it towards my burrow at the meadow. As I crash through the brush, I hear crashing as well. And as I stop, it stops second after it stops. Seconds after moving, as I move, I say F it and push harder until I blast out of the thick onto a small knoll that drops off steeply on all sides. I look down the left, which is about the only way down for any animal, and what do I see? 3 massive foot slides, like something massive took 3 sliding steps and was at the bottom. Oh, it's getting bright. I'm gonna move, hold on. To put this in perspective, a bear would have been sliding on his ass face first, and it wasn't an ungulate. It was mind-blowing, like holy F. And it circled right towards the lake because my buddy was about 300 yards straight ahead of where it went down that hill. I had to crawl down. No way in hell could a person remake those imprints down that slope. And as I wanted to follow it to the lake, my buddy was hollering for me to come to where he is. So I do, and he's standing in a section of the original morning meadow, pointing down at these shit patties. Steve, they were like cow patty-sized human diarrhea, blueberry splats, not a bear shit, and definitely no cattle anywhere in hundreds of miles. I just looked at him and said, man, I honestly just don't know. Already doing circles in my brain, trying to figure out what the hell's been going on all day. We start heading back towards my truck after that, and the road winds along the edge of the lake the way those tracks were headed. So of course my head's on a swivel, and I keep watching towards the lake. I catch movement, and my head snaps onto it. Boom! Got you in my line of sight between 2 cedar trees is a black figure. Basically like the biggest muscle head you've ever seen. Just head to shoulders. The traps basically made it look like he has no neck and is just a head on the shoulders. I watched for 10 plus minutes. That's like 10 lifetimes in wild time. It never moved, not a twitch. And when I asked my bro if he could see anything out of the ordinary, he couldn't see it. I just kept watching. I know what I'm looking at. About 5 minutes later, I tell him it's nothing. Stump moose, carry on. To this day, I've never seen anything between those cedar trees in that spot, and definitely not a giant, shredded linebacker looking thing. So as you can imagine, my brain is going 100 miles per hour. I know what I've seen. I know what's been happening all day. Just what the F. So we get back to the truck. My bro takes his boots off and puts his runners on. We have a bite to eat, and we get in the truck and start heading out the way we drove in. As I'm driving out, I passed a small makeshift road that goes in about 200 yards towards the lake, and my senses were on fire. I slammed the truck in park, middle of the main road, jumped out, grabbed my rifle, and started booting it into this side chute. My buddy's like, what the F, where are you going? Wait, I didn't stop. Everything in me was tingling. I knew something was up and I went straight at it. And as I get to the end of this 200-yard spur, keep in mind, I ran in, I hear snap, a stick breaks 15 yards from me. I go right at the sound, under an alder fall, and stop dead in my tracks. Doolin! I yell, and he comes running in behind me. His running shoes, haha. I'm standing there pointing down. There's a footprint with a stick broken in it. And I say, what is that? Not saying what I already know it is. He looks at me and says, holy F, that's a Sasquatch print. I just looked him in the eyes and said, it's right here, right now. Threw him my rifle and said, wait here, I'm going to go get my camera. I come running back with the camera and my other rifle to find him, as white as a ghost, locked and loaded, ready to shoot. He's freaking out, telling me to take your effing picture and let's go. This is a native man, and he is also not someone who fears any man. Me, I was alive. I had waited for that moment my entire bush life, my friend. I was more alive than I've ever felt. I convinced him to follow me a little further, and as we did, we heard something go running up the hill to our left. So, as we point our rifles towards the sound, we are hit with a roar from behind us. And I mean percussion, like a mix between an ape, an elephant, and a lion. Like words can't do it justice. So as we turn again to face that sound, the smaller sound takes off behind us and out of earshot. When the thing roared, my bro freaked. Back to back, he yells. Then the same birds as earlier that day swarmed the trees in front of us. So you get an idea, it's an old growth hillside. Anyway, I went right towards where the birds came, and I just looked up and down everywhere. My buddy figured it was in the trees. No punctuation, remember you guys, alright? Sorry. He was over it. After the roar, he wanted to leave even more, so he left me in there and started walking out the way we came. I knew it was still there, but it was getting late, and my bro kept saying, let's go, let's go. As he's walking out, so I reluctantly start walking out. I'm still about 100 yards from him now and start walking towards the truck. As I am, I hear another stick break, and I look right at the rifle, shoulder. What am I looking at? The same figure, same shape as seen between the cedar trees. We make eye contact, and I almost instantly put my rifle down. We just stare at it. Sorry? And we just stare. It was like time stood still. But I know it didn't. And well, here's where it gets even more crazy. It basically changed 4 to 5 shades until it was completely vanished into the hillside. The reason I can say this is because the eyes didn't change. They stayed there. Goldish yellow color, and his body disappeared into the background. I've never tried to describe this in writing, but a lot like the movie Predator. It just blended in like, I say, 4 or 5 shade shifts. And if that's not what it was doing, then it literally just disappeared into the hillside. This is like 10 yards from me. So for me, I can't explain what it did, but it went from visible to vanished in a matter of a blink of an eye. I'm sure you can imagine I've been called nuts for the last part, especially, but from one bushman to another, I don't need to prove it to anyone. I've had other encounters since, but this one is the one that forever changed my life. It took my friend a long time to go back. Myself, I said, fuck that. Sorry, F that. I said, F that, and got right back at it. And well, let's just say, as you say, my head's always on a swivel out there. Sorry for the massive message. Keep at it, Steve. You're the man. Hope to hear from you. But if not, hope you enjoy the encounter. Sincerely, a fellow hunter. That's a doozy, dude. And you've covered all the bases that most people share here, right? Including the pattern that the previous group of so-called big names in this Bigfoot world have been intently not talking about, not reporting, not allowing people to speak freely when they can stop them. Right? The vanishing part. And that sure is a great description of it going down. That's a real good one. You got my attention there. Anyway. And another. Make sure you email me back, alright, man? Make sure you email me back with everything you got. And, you know the routine of the future. If you got somebody out there who's kind of laughing at you, or you want to talk about, or somebody brings it up with you, whatever goes down, share this video with them, alright? Share this video with them, or maybe another one, whatever you want. Excuse me, to let them know there's literally tens of thousands, if not millions, of experiencers, first-hand eyewitnesses around the globe, and a piss load of them are here, right? There you go. I guess the only thing I was missing with my experience yesterday was the visual, right? Had everything else basically crossed off, the bright light and the crack and the rumble. I wonder if the closer I get here, the farther I go here, the more it's going to ramp up for me, I wonder. I guess it's probably, well, you know, all my life I've always said since my first time and the second time, maybe 3 times of visuals, but I've always known that I will be having a face-to-face again. I just don't know when, but there's just no way I'm not going to, right? I'm really not really into it. I'd rather do it on my terms, not somebody else deciding they're going to come at me from a bush 10 yards to my right, right? Alright, who's next? Here we go. It's titled, What the F? They should all be titled that, right? Steve, please keep my name and information confidential. No problem, I got you. This whole thing has left me in a haze of confusion and disbelief. My name is blank, and I live in southeast Wisconsin. Not your typical sighting location. What I'm about to tell you happened less than 48 hours ago. I spent the day yesterday throwing up and having panic attacks. I don't know who to talk to about this. I don't know what to do. I have to tell someone. I feel like there's significant details that need to be shared. Or maybe not, I don't know. Sorry for rambling. I still feel terrible. Anyway, here it goes. Sunday afternoon about 1 p.m. I went to one of a dozen public hunting grounds that I frequent in hopes of finding a few sheds from some of the mature bucks I'd seen during this past season. Jefferson Marsh. There's a substantial amount of snow on the ground, which, as you know, slows travel. I'd made it about 3/4 of a mile from the access, paralleling the creek the whole time. This is a familiar location to me and an awesome big buck bedding area this time of year. As I started to head west away from the creek towards bedding, I noticed a nasty smell. A gut pile with a musk quality. Well, it must be musk quality, like BO. I didn't pay it too much mind and kept moving. When shed hunting, my focus is on scanning for antlers, not much else. I made it 100 yards from the creek, just into the thicker cedar swamp, and that's when shit hit the fan. It started with a thump behind me. It sounded and felt like a 4-wheeler hit the ground. Everything shook. I quickly turned around, and I saw it. 30 yards away on the trail I just walked was this thing. It didn't look anything like the Patterson Sasquatch, not at all. It stood probably 5.5 to 6.5 feet tall, extremely muscular, dark brown hair that looked like it had been falling out, like an ape with mange. Its head was smaller than it should have been, with big, beady black eyes. The face was wrinkled, lips a weird black/brown mix. It clearly had canines, big ones. It was drooling or slobbering as it breathed. Its arms hung just to its knees, maybe just above. Its hands were thick and muscular and grayish in color. Its tongue was gray also. Its ears were human-like, but bigger and pointed. It was completely naked with genitals that are similar but different than ours. Its penis was gray and covered in hair. Keep in mind all this happened within 2 minutes or less. However, I will never forget anything I saw ever. I can't. After turning to face this thing, the creature made fists, both hands at its sides, slowly bending its elbows to 90 degrees. I was stunned, shocked, impossible, terrified. The second I started to slowly back up while simultaneously unsnapping my knife, the creature quickly pointed both fists at me, palms up, fists clench, and made motion that looked like he was humping the air, a powerful pelvic thrust, This was accompanied by a huff. It was so loud and powerful it knocked me down from close to 40 yards away. What the hell? It was like my mouth was frozen in a half open position, trying to inhale and scream at the same time. I couldn't breathe. It's like I forgot how. I couldn't move. I felt completely paralyzed. I could hear it coming. It sounded like a horse when breathing. Tears streamed down my face as my kids and my family entered my mind. I knew it was over. This thing was from the pit of hell and 20 yards away and closing. I couldn't move my head to look at it. I tried desperately to roll and regain control of my body, but I couldn't. Not until the creature was less than 15 yards away. There was an enormous growl/roar from my left, about 100 yards away. I felt it in my bones. Suddenly I couldn't move. I scrambled to my feet in a haze. The creature had completely lost interest in me and stared intently towards the roar. The creature quickly moved 20 yards towards the roar and hid behind a 6 or 7 foot cedar tree. At that same moment, 100 yards north, direction of the growl, something started running my direction, fast, plowing down trees, bushes, and I'm certain anything else in its way. By now I was on my feet, legs like jelly, confused, scared, and adrenaline on 100. I started to run, sort of, more like stumble back towards the creek and ultimately my truck. I was 50 or 60 yards from the creek when the unseen creature reached the hell creature. I looked back to see a giant black figure on 2 legs lower itself into a tackling position and completely take out the cedar tree and the creature behind it. Something let out a scream that will give me nightmares forever. They hit the snow in a blur, shit flying everywhere, growling, snarling, roaring, screaming, and the sound of trees coming down left and right. Words cannot do it justice. Instantly in my head, I saw one word: run. I did, in fact. I kicked off my muck boots and ran, without stopping, to my truck. I could still hear the creatures fighting from the parking lot, clearly. Then a loud scream that sounded pain-inflicted, then silence. I threw up at the truck a few times and collapsed. After 5 minutes of leaning against my truck tire and processing what happened, I heard it again. A roar. The same one as before, like King Kong. Unbelievable. I'm still in complete shock. I considered calling police, DNR, and anyone else who can do something. What the F is going on? How can they keep this under wraps? People need to know it's not safe. I have to get the word out. What kind of a person would I be if I did nothing? I have to go back. I have to. Document what I can and thank the thing that saved my life. There's tracks everywhere. I need to know, and I'm not crazy. I don't know. Share this if you want. It's 100% legit. It's not embellished or exaggerated at all. I stuck to the facts I could remember. P.S. It almost looked like a bat in the face, sort of. Sorry, that's just a thought of that. Thanks for being an outlet for people like me, and be careful. Well, I'm pretty sure you are not going to be surprised if myself and everybody else here goes, holy shit, and what? I'm pretty certain that's the first time we've had something like that emailed in. I would have remembered reading an experience like that. We've heard of these beings taking out cougars, scaring away other predators a few times for various people, but this one's a brand new one. Now, I don't know when you sent this to me. If you are still here with us watching this channel, if you could, please email me back. Share with us what you saw when you went back. And I would imagine you would have took pictures, and I would imagine you would have took a huge set and maybe even a couple of shots of whiskey before you managed to get back into that same place, right? I wish I was closer. I'd go back with you. I don't even know where you were. And did I already read it? Where you were, I don't know. I'm so tired right now, you guys. Has anybody else out there had something similar happen or seen something with a similar description? If you have, you can email it to us at sharemystory@howtohunt.com. All right, we want to hear all about it. All about it. Alright. Get one more out here. My partners are all coming back to the dock here in a minute. That outboard behind me is a little annoying, but I guess you can't get away from that, right? This is titled Encounters. Hi Steve, thank you for your dedication in helping those of us that has encountered these beings. Please don't use my name. Too many times people have shared my experiences with look at me like I'm nuts or just crazy, or they simply watch too much BS television like Finding Bigfoot and the idiots in the show who claim to be researchers. What a piece of shit these people are. A little background about myself. I'm weeks away from being 60 years old. What years of my life I wasn't in the service. Other than working as a millwright or industrial mechanic, my free time was spent hunting, fishing, camping, and roaming around the mountains and woods. I served over 8 years in the Marine Corps, and I'm a combat vet. It took 30 years to finally be diagnosed with PTSD. I tried various medicines, nothing worked. I found that solitude for me was the best medicine. Hiking, hunting, or fishing, sometimes for days at a time, helped more than any drug I was prescribed. I've had what I believe to be 3 encounters. The first 2 happened in South Georgia. I lived a little more than an hour's drive from the Okefenokee Swamp. I lived on the edge of Roundabout Swamp, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 square acres. I've heard wood knocks and howls, but nothing I'd ever associated with a Sasquatch at the time. The first encounter was in the fall of 1998 while I was boar hunting. I was sitting in a blind I'd made out of the local vegetation, overlooking a game trail. The scrub and brush behind the trail was so thick you could only see it through small gaps and spaces. There was a small stream bed behind it that only ran in wet weather. It was dry at the time. I heard the footfalls of it before I saw it. You could tell it was bipedal. It had extremely heavy footfalls. I waited for what seemed like forever before I spotted it, or what I could see of it. It was approximately 40 yards away and it was huge, looking to be at least 4 feet wide. I saw part of its torso and shoulders and part of its arms. I saw through the small gaps in the scrub what appeared to be the creature's head rub under the limb of a live oak tree where it stopped. I knew immediately it was no bear. At the time I could not comprehend exactly what I was seeing, but I knew that my 30-06 wasn't quite enough of a rifle for what I was seeing, especially since I couldn't see it. Hold on. Especially since I couldn't see enough of it to place a well-aimed shot. In fact, I never lifted my rifle. I couldn't wrap my head around what exactly I was seeing. It turned and looked directly at me. I could only see one eye. I froze in fear. It turned and left the area silently, almost melting into the scrub, which was pretty amazing considering all the brush and scrub in the stream bed, and it went silent doing so. I went back the next day to measure the distance from the ground to the bottom of the limb it was under, which was 8'3". I took a close friend with me, showed him the blind I was in and the limb it was under. He believed me and agreed with the measurement and that I measured the correct limb. He said that it sounded like a Sasquatch. I agreed that it probably was, but I didn't get a good enough look at it to be positive. My gut feeling was that that was exactly what it was. I fully trust my gut instinct, always have and always will. Following it has got me out of some dangerous situations in combat and everyday life. The second time is in the spring of 1999. I walked out of the house at 4 a.m. one morning to go to work. About midway between the house and pickup truck, approximately 15 yards, I was overcome with complete and overpowering fear. I froze in my tracks and broke out in a cold sweat. Looked around but couldn't see due to darkness. It was completely silent. So after what seemed like forever, but probably less than a minute, I sprinted to the truck and sped out of my driveway and down the dirt road. I've never experienced nothing like this in my entire life. I've never felt fear like this in any situation, including combat. In combat, we are trained to react accordingly. I moved back home, East Tennessee, in 2015 after a couple of heart attacks. The small town Graysville I was raised in is located at the foot of a mountain and about 6 miles west of the Tennessee River. The area next to the mountain is littered with abandoned old coal mines and coke ovens and several caves. I explored this area extensively in my younger days. I found this cave that somehow wound up in an old coke oven due to a collapsed wall in the coke oven. I decided to explore this area in the spring of 2016. After several futile attempts to locate this cave, I succeeded. The entrance was covered with honeysuckle vines and briars. I finally wormed my way into the cave, and I decided to follow the coke oven. When I reached it, I don't know what a coke oven is, I went towards what should have been the end of the oven. After an hour or so of slow crawling, I reached the end of the oven only to find another collapse. In a small opening, I could see daylight between the roots of a large tree that had fell, probably creating the collapse. I moved some small saplings and vegetation to get a better view of the area I was at. I was well aware of this area. It is now part of the Cumberland Trail. As I hunted and hiked this area as I grew up, there was a small creek approximately 100 feet down the hillside from where I was at. I sat there and enjoyed the view and the solitude for about an hour, for about half an hour. I looked upstream and saw movement about 150 yards away at a bend in the creek. This area was used by moonshiners during Prohibition. At first I thought I'd run across something tending to their marijuana patch. After several seconds it stepped into view. It was massive. I would guess 500 pounds. Reddish brown in color. Its arms looked abnormally long, extremely wide chest, face was almost man-like. Flat with short hair or fur around the edge of the face, and hair, I would guess 2 to 3 inches on its body. Yes, it was definitely male. The same overwhelming fear washed over me. It walked to the edge of the creek downstream toward me. All I could do was pray it didn't see me. At about 75 yards, it stopped mid-stride and locked eyes with me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, much less what was seeing me. After what seemed like eternity, it stepped out of the creek and headed up the mountain. It was out of sight in mere seconds. I made it out of the coke oven and cave in what seemed like twice as long as it took getting in. I was still trembling and rubber-legged when I made it back to my truck. I walked the trail back to this area the following August to around 2 months later to try and wrap my head around what had happened and try to get a better estimate on his height. I guessed around 7 feet. I looked at the entrance where it spotted me. There is no way it could have seen me. I was sitting in complete darkness except what little light filtered this entrance at the base of the mountain facing west. The entrance was small enough where a normal-sized man would struggle to get in or out. I'm 6'4", 230 pounds, and I couldn't fit through it if I tried. I confessed to a couple other friends as to what I saw, and one of whom that believed me. He said, for the last 15 years or so, there have been reports of sightings. While growing up, I'd never heard of such, as I had practically been all throughout that mountain range. Sorry, this is such a long email. You're greatly appreciated for the work you do. It's a damn shame the governments are trying to keep everyone in the dark about this instead of giving us people a heads up of what is actually out there. Any questions, feel free to email me at. Alright, man, appreciate that. Another club member hits the list, right? Another. Screw the government, man. Who gives a shit about the government? They're keeping far more away from us than just this topic, and they are keeping us. Yeah, I don't even need to go on about it right now. You know what I'm going to say. But anyway, there you go. More voices heard, more voices waiting to be heard, and they just keep coming in, and there's no way getting out of it, and there's no denying it. The cat's out of the bag. The proof's been in for years. And there's some big answers coming. Without a doubt. Right? But anyway, the other 2 boats are in, the crews are on the dock, shit's going down, and I will get this loaded up as soon as I can, share it with all of you, and keep this ball rolling, no matter what.